Okay, I think everybody from the wedding room has been arrived to the meeting. So welcome to the From Vision to Practice Implementing the UNESCO Culture and Arts Education Guidelines webinar. And first, happy International Culture and Arts Education Week. My name is Mira Kallio-Teivin, and I'm past president of InSEA and incoming chair of the World Alliance of Arts Education, or WAAE. In this webinar, we open the series of International Culture and Arts Education Week webinars organized by the WAAE, which is 5 webinars we are holding this week. In today's webinar, we focused on the newly published implementation guidance for the UNESCO Framework for Culture and Art Education, and we're very lucky to have Tariq Dalal Mossad and Matilde Stolroff from UNESCO to give us an introduction to the guidebook. And in the panel conversation that will follow, we will discuss what might be the implementation guidance and the framework like for art educators, what might they mean in different contexts. And for this panelists, we have all the presidents from all 4 WAAE organizations here joining us in this webinar. And I will have them introduce themselves, all the presidents, in the beginning of the panel conversation. Before we get started, I would also, I have sad news that we would like to acknowledge in the beginning of this event from news from Marie-Françoise Chevin. Would you, Patsy, say a couple words from
it is with deep sadness that I let everybody in this webinar know that the INSEA representative to UNESCO for many, many years, Marie-Françoise Chevin, who was a past president of INSEA, unfortunately died during the week. We honor the work that she did and her dedication to art education, but particularly to UNESCO. She was part of the collective group of NGOs celebrating peace and the role of art and culture and peace through UNESCO, and she was very closely worked very closely with Marie-Claude Machon, who sent us a really beautiful letter, and we're very grateful. So I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge the work that Marie-Françoise did for UNESCO over the years, and to say that her legacy will live on in INSEA. We are determined to make sure that none of the ties are broken. So we just remember her for a moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Patsy. Just as an organizational structure, we will first have Matilde and Tariq introduce the guidelines, and then we'll turn to the panel. And after the panels have had a conversation according to questions, which I will also put in the chat, the questions while we are moving forward. You will have a chance to ask your own questions towards the end, but you can post them to the chat whenever you feel like it. So thank you, Tariq and Matilde again, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. First, I'm going to just share a PowerPoint presentation, so please let me know if you can all see this. Put full screen.
Yes, we see.
Does that look okay on your screens?
Just maybe put it in a full screen, like a sharing mode.
Sorry, 1 second.
Perfect.
That's okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then if I change slide, you can see that as well, correct?
Not yet. Yes.
I think there's a little delay, but that's all right. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today. My name is Tariq Mossad, and I am pleased to be here representing UNESCO's culture sector. At UNESCO, we're very encouraged by the many events and activities that are taking place around the world this week as we celebrate the first UNESCO Culture and Arts Education Week under its renewed designation, expanding from the former International Arts Education Week. I would like to warmly thank the World Alliance for Arts Education for its strong engagement and for bringing together educators, scholars, and practitioners from across the arts and education communities around the theme of arts education in action for peace. This kind of international dialogue is exactly what the week is intended to foster. For this first edition, UNESCO is celebrating under its theme Culture and Arts Education for Lasting Peace. Culture and arts education are essential drivers of peaceful, just, and resilient societies, and this week is an important opportunity to showcase their impact in practice. So today I am joined by my colleague Mathilde, who is here with us today from UNESCO's education sector. The aim of our presentation is to walk you through this new implementation guidance for the UNESCO framework, explain what it contains, and show how it can be used in real contexts. Now, the framework was adopted by UNESCO member states in the United Arab Emirates in Abu Dhabi in 2024. That was an important milestone, but the work does not just stop after its adoption. Now is the real time for the real work to begin. So how do countries actually use this? How do institutions work with it? And how can culture and education actors translate a global framework into everyday practice? So that is really the logic behind the implementation guidance that we're here to discuss. So before getting into the guidance itself, let me take a quick step back and say a few words about how this work emerged. And we will now jump into the second slide. So one of the most important things to understand about the framework is that it was member state led and a very highly participatory process from the beginning. This was not a document that was written by a small expert group in isolation. UNESCO coordinated a 2-year global process involving more than 2,300 stakeholders, multiple regional consultations, international expert meetings, teacher surveys, multi-stakeholder dialogue, and 2 rounds of written consultation with its UNESCO member states. And importantly, this process engaged both ministries of culture and ministries of education, which is an extremely important point. Because culture and arts education naturally sits across sectors, it's not only an education discussion, nor is it only a culture discussion. It is a shared space. So the culmination of this work was the World Conference on Culture and Arts Education in Abu Dhabi in February 2024, where ministries of culture and education came together and adopted this framework. And what emerged was, for the first time, a comprehensive global reference framework for integrating culture and the arts into education systems and learning ecosystems worldwide. So here, on this next slide, this provides a quick overview of the framework and its overall architecture. So I won't go through every box here. There's a lot of elements, but I'll just pick a few key elements here. The framework is built around 7 guiding principles, as you can see. Human rights, gender equality, inclusion, co-creation, lifelong and life-wide learning. It also identifies 3 major objectives, going from sustainable development and peace, harnessing technology, including digital technologies and AI, and lastly, strengthening the integration of culture and the arts into policies, strategies, and programs. So the framework then moves into 5 strategic goals and 8 implementation modalities. And what is important here is that the framework adopts a very broad understanding of culture and arts education. We're not talking about only arts subjects in schools. We're talking about ecosystems, governance, policy, learning environments, digital technologies, partnerships, research. All of these invites us to think systematically. So it is, however, a very dense document that provides the direction, but not the how. So as a follow-up step, UNESCO worked on a guide to support countries to operationalize this framework. Now, what exactly is the guidance? Put simply, it is designed to make the framework more practical and operational. UNESCO launched the guidance at Mondiacult 2025. Mondiacult is the World Conference on Cultural Policies and Sustainable Development. This took place last year in Barcelona, Spain. And for this launch, the primary purpose was to help translate the framework into concrete action. So it was addressed to both policymakers and practitioners in the culture and education sectors. That means ministries, of course, yes, but also educators, artists, cultural professionals, museums, and heritage practitioners, and many others working directly within learning ecosystems. The guidance contains guiding questions, actionable recommendations, and a step-by-step methodology. But it is important to underline something here. UNESCO is not saying, here is one model, go implement it exactly in this one specific way. That's not how this works. The idea, rather, is to provide tools, recommendations, examples, and multiple pathways that can support implementation across very different contexts. Another important feature is the inclusion of illustrative practices from 52 countries, which is very important. Implementation becomes much more tangible when people can see what this work looks like in different settings and in different regions. Now I will get into the structure of the guidance. So here we can see that each strategic goal and implementation modality follows a similar structure. You will find guiding questions, recommendations for policymakers, tips for practitioners, expected outcomes, and lastly, the illustrative practices, as I mentioned. The intention is to help users move from the reflection phase into implementation. For example, a ministry may be asking, what are our policy gaps? A teacher or a museum educator may ask, how can this be applied in learning environments, for example? So the guidance thus tries to meet these different entry points. And I think this is important because implementation, as we all are aware, is not a single linear process. Different actors engage with this work from different institutional realities and professional perspectives. The guidance, therefore, aims to be as flexible, usable, and action-oriented as possible. Finally, let me end here with one of the dimensions of the guidance that I personally find particularly valuable. As I mentioned, we have more than 50 countries with their illustrative practices highlighted within this implementation guidance. You can see the geographical spread represented here across UNESCO's regions. These examples were gathered through an online survey with UNESCO member states, together with additional sources and contributions. Why does this matter? Because one of the most common questions UNESCO receives is, what does implementation actually look like? How can we make this happen? And the answer often is, implementation looks very different depending on contexts, of course. So the example included in the guidance are therefore not meant to be copy and pasted. They're there to inspire, to support peer learning, and to demonstrate the diversity of approaches already underway around the world. Some examples come from formal education settings. Others involve heritage, museums, community initiatives, partnerships, or non-formal learning environments. Together, they show that culture and arts education is already happening in many different ways, and that there's enormous value in sharing experiences across regions and sectors. And on that note, I will hand it over to my colleague from the education sector, Mathilde, who will take us into the next part of the presentation and explore some of these strategic goals and concrete implementation dimensions of the guidance. Thank you. Mathilde?
Thank you, Tariq. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me well? It's okay? Okay.
Perfect.
And thank you once again for this opportunity to present. So I turn to the core of the implementation guidance, which is really focusing on how to achieve the strategic goals that countries, committed or agreed upon to implement, to achieve. For the sake of time, I will only touch upon two of these strategic goals, and I begin with goal 1, which refers to access, inclusion, and equity. So the framework, the document itself, it makes very clear that all learners should have the opportunity to access, participate in, and contribute to meaningful culture and arts education. And this, of course, is especially relevant for Indigenous people, persons with disabilities, all of those living in disadvantaged and vulnerable situations, such as refugees, migrants, displaced persons, victims of armed conflict, and communities affected by crises or natural disasters. But however, in a survey that we actually shared with member states in the first semester of 2025, this remains one of the least prioritized areas in national policies. From the answers we got, only around 10% of countries have established programs that directly address access, inclusion, and equity. And yet, of course, as we know, this is fundamental to ensure that every learner is not left behind. So what the guidance does is provide practical tools to support member states in addressing these challenges. So it starts by proposing some guiding questions that help countries assess how accessible and inclusive their systems are. So such as, for example, what barriers to inclusion still exist within current culture and arts education systems, or asking if culture and arts education does incorporate diverse perspectives, if it actually and actively challenges colonial legacies and systemic biases to ensure that all learners feel represented, not only represented, but valued. At the policy level, the guidance recommends several concrete measures. Among many others, these includes, for example, investing in digital learning and outreach initiatives to ensure that learners in rural and remote areas have access, strengthening accessibility for persons with disabilities, strengthening the use, of course, of mother tongue as a medium of instruction, and developing pedagogical materials in local languages. It also emphasizes the importance of partnerships between schools, cultural institutions, artists, and local communities to create more inclusive learning environments. Despite the low number of countries, we also see inspiring practices across the world. So, for example, in Pakistan, the Radio Education Project has reached learners in 19 marginalized areas, and it combines interactive educational instruction with elements of intangible cultural heritage. In, for example, Estonia, Latvia, and Norway, we have these national programs that are called the culture backpacks, which enable children and youth to freely access these cultural events, so theaters, cinema, museums. I would now move to strategic goal 2. Thank you. So we all know that access alone isn't enough, and strategic goal 2, what it emphasizes the importance that learners also benefit from, meaningful, high-quality educational experiences, and that these experiences remain throughout life. So strategic goal 2 refers to or focuses on contextual, quality, lifelong, and life-wide learning. And at its core, it's really about ensuring that each learner is equipped with skills such as creativity, critical thinking, innovation, and interdisciplinary skills that are essential for today's world. And the guidance again reflects this. So, it proposes certain questions, important questions, so that countries reflect upon how if culture and arts are generally embedded into their educational systems, not only in childhood education, but across the learning path, so up until adult learning. Or are culture and the arts still treated as secondary or isolated subjects? Do learning environments and experience integrate local knowledge systems, intangible cultural heritage, cultural practices, and expressions? And the guidance proposes, of course, a holistic approach. And among many other things, it encourages the integration of culture and arts as a cross-cutting pedagogical approach, so across different subjects and disciplines, rather than seeing it as a standalone, arts classes. And it also suggests to use place-based and contextual education to help learners of all ages and backgrounds strengthen their connections with intangible cultural heritage and their local environments. The survey showed that countries are making important progress in this area. So, for example, We have Namibia and Zimbabwe who, working with educators, have integrated intangible cultural heritage into their teaching. And so it really shows how local traditions, oral histories, community knowledge can enrich learning while safeguarding cultural heritage. In Angola, for example, learners of all ages are able to participate in cultural festival that showcases performances by students. So again, I won't go through all the strategic goals. I pass now to the enabling conditions. And what we call the enabling conditions is really those essential dimensions that need to be put in place in order for this change to be sustainable and that we ensure that strong culture and arts education systems are made possible. So, for example, in partnerships, which is one of the dimensions that stands out as an area where countries have made significant progress, we see that 65% of the reporting countries have established coordination mechanisms between education and culture institutions. So, of course, the guidance recommends to strengthen these interinstitutional mechanisms, as well as strengthening partnerships at the local and community levels. So, for instance, teachers and cultural professionals can work with cultural institutions and creative hubs to develop joint programs. As I said, this commitment is visible across a few countries. So we have Saudi Arabia and Romania have developed or adopted joint national plans to advance cultural education, jointly done by both ministries, so of culture and education. And we also see the Pan-African Arterial Network, which was created in Senegal in 2007, and I think is active in various countries, works with artists and NGOs and institutions and donors to strengthen the creative and cultural sectors. However, by contrast, the other enabling condition, which is research, data, and assessment, we see that a lot of attention is still needed. So only 25% of the reporting countries have established monitoring mechanisms to assess culture and arts education nationally. And as we know, this is key in order to strengthen evidence-based approaches and inform policy in this area. So one of the recommendations that the guidance proposes is that governments work with national statistical institutions to develop concrete indicators that measure the relevance and impact of culture and arts education. Also, for example, to produce disaggregated data in order to reveal inequalities in access to culture and arts. We have a good example that the guidance highlights, which is from India. So India's State of the Education Reports edition in 2024 was dedicated entirely to culture and arts education. And we see that it recommends really concrete steps so that the country implements this. And so they, for example, suggest creating national steering committees, strengthening teacher training, expanding access for disadvantaged groups, and leveraging digital tools. Okay, so these charts really illustrate the trends that I've been describing. So we see encouraging progress in a few areas, in lifelong learning and skills for sustainable futures, in the institutionalization of culture and the arts education ecosystems. But we also see gaps. So for example, if you see the column in pink, which is strategic goal 3, and it focuses on cultural diversity and critical engagement, we see it remains less prioritized. And it's a concern because we know that it's precisely these skills, so critical thinking and intercultural dialogue, that are necessary to help build more cohesive and peaceful societies. Looking ahead, the survey and the guidance also point to 2 critical areas, which we see are also not among the most prioritized areas, which are monitoring and financing. Around 36% of the countries that reported have dedicated financial commitments for culture and arts. So mobilizing resources, of course, a focus, a need, especially when it remains so extremely underfinanced in the majority of countries. In relation to monitoring, the framework, the document proposes that member states, well, it's always voluntarily, but that they produce and share national progress reports on the implementation of the framework every 4 years. So what we are currently now doing is developing a comprehensive self-assessment monitoring tool for member states, and we intend to launch this tool in 2027. We are also working on developing a global repository of good practices on culture and arts education, so to ensure that the diversity of experiences and approaches are made available, and that this knowledge is shared. So, of course, we invite all of you to share your work, to share your initiatives, so that you can contribute to this repository and to these efforts. And as you know, we're celebrating Culture and Arts Education Week. And what best way to make this evidence visible, but not through initiatives like the ones today and the ones that are happening across the world. It's really a key moment. We see it's to raise awareness, to show how culture and arts education practices and initiatives can contribute to more sustainable and peaceful societies. And we're very pleased to see that there's a number of organizations, partners that are celebrating this week, through workshops, webinars, concerts, conference activities with learners. One of the activities that we promoted was an Art for Peace online exhibition, and you can find it on our website. And you see two of the art pieces that two students from Uruguay and India drew and sent and submitted to us. And you'll see this this online exhibition on our website. So I think we end here. You have the last slide here. You have the QR code where you're able to download the implementation guidance. It is now available in English, French, and Spanish, and hopefully soon in Arabic. And I thank you. We thank you for your attention. You have our contacts there, our mailbox. Please don't hesitate to write, to share your contributions and work. And thank you again for this opportunity to present. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Matilda, there is one direct question. Could you please clarify what the safeguarding ICH and CAAE acronym stands for, please? Sorry, I'm admitting people at the same time.
Absolutely. So ICH is Intangible Cultural Heritage, and CAI is Culture and Arts Education. Sorry about the acronyms.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. Tariq, could you stop sharing the screen, please?
Yes, absolutely. There you go.
Thank you, Tariq and Matilda, for the excellent presentation. And oh boy, it's an extensive material, and we've all tried to go through it. And this was really helpful to open it up more. And I think the emphasis on accessibility was really interesting and something that I learned based on the previous round. So now I'm going to invite all of the presidents of WAAE to introduce themselves quickly, and then we'll go to some panel questions. So Sanja, could you please start?
Hello, good morning, good evening, good day. My name is Sanja Krsmanović-Tasić. I come from Belgrade, Serbia, and I am the current president of IDEA, International Drama Theatre and Education Association, that is one of the founding members of WAAE. I'm also a theatre director, actress, and choreographer. So I'm very much engaged like drama expert, drama teacher also, and I'm leading my organization now for 6 years.
Thank you, Sanja. And then go to Jody.
Hello, my name is Jody Kirshner, and I am the president-elect of the International Society for Music Education. In July in Montreal, I will assume the presidency of the International Society for Music Education. I'm also professor of music education at the Oberlin College and Conservatory of Music in the United States, and I'm really thrilled to be part of this panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Patsy?
Hi, my name is Patsy Bodkin. I'm the president of InSEA since July of 2025. I'd like to also introduce my colleague Susan Coles, who is the Vice President of INSEA, who's joining us here today. My background is in initial teacher education and continuing professional development of teachers, so I'm very, very interested in some of the points that have been brought up in the guidelines. I'm from Ireland, and I'm very glad to be part of the panel today. Thank you.
And I believe we don't have Sarah Knox joining us today. Unfortunately, she sent an email that she has a power outage in New Zealand, where she's at, and she's the president and represents the World Dance Alliance. And we are missing her this morning, this afternoon, this evening. Sorry about that. So I'm going to turn to the first panel question, and I'm pasting it also to the chat. So please go ahead and see it at the same time when I'm asking the first question. The framework encourages moving beyond classroom-centered learning towards lifelong, life-wide, and community-based learning ecosystems. What shifts in educational practice or institutional thinking are needed to support more sustainable, intergenerational, and community-rooted arts learning? I'm turning first towards Jody. Would you like to try and answer this question?
Thank you. I need to backtrack one moment. Our president for International Society for Music Education, Patricia Gonzalez Moreno, is also here. So I want to be sure to acknowledge her. My apologies for that oversight. Forgive me. So to answer this question at this point, as a person who is a part of music teacher education, I think in terms of curricular reform, I would call on arts teacher preparation programs to be directly engaged in community-based learning. That is a model where there are times where students are in the classroom, but then they are also have part of their learning in the community where arts are occurring. So this is not a separation of the educational process. It's not service learning, but rather learning from the people who are doing the arts, whether that's culture bearers, whether that are the participants in arts, whether those are not-for-profit organizations. The learning is shared and the teaching is shared in the curriculum, so that the community-based learning occurs not only in the university setting, but in community locations, prisons, hospice, music therapy and hospital emergency rooms, community centers, after-school youth clubs, and again, not-for-profit organizations. In these ways, I think future arts educators can also weigh their own strengths and passions and begin to see themselves engaging with an array of professional artistic pathways. Oberlin College, for example, the institution with which I'm affiliated, is in partnership with the Grafton Correctional Institution, bringing music, choir, and orchestra and drama facilitation to the prison. Meanwhile, the college student learners engage with the prison student learners together alongside of each other to create meaningful arts productions and intercultural understandings. So I think this community-based model to reshape traditional methods classes that occur at the university level can be really important, so that there is the community experience infused in the curricular model, rather than something that's separate or something that's seen as separate as an internship or something that happens after the real learning occurs at the university courses. The real learning happens with the people who are making art in the moment. And I think that's important for our future educators to see that the education and the arts culture are linked.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That was a brilliant answer. Anybody else from the panel want to jump into this answering this question? If not, I'm going to move on to the next question and pasting it in the chat. So their recommendations emphasize interdisciplinarity and collaborative learning processes. What are some ways practitioners can move beyond isolated art projects towards more collaborative, socially engaged, or community-based practices? I will have Susan start answering this question.
Thank you, Mira. I think that one way practitioners can move beyond isolated art projects is that we need to rethink art not simply as an outcome or a product, but as a social process. I do a lot of work in schools. I see art being measured, but not necessarily valued. And it's something that happens with people other than being merely for assessment. And I think that the framework from UNESCO encourages approaches that connect learning to lived experiences, community, dialogue, well-being, sustainability and cultural participation. It's to go beyond schools. We really do need to focus on young people. Don't forget we've had a pandemic and we have young people that have been changed and damaged as we have by that disruption to human history. And we live in a world of conflict. We have wars going on. We have political collisions going on. And so we need to really develop our local communities, be proud of our heritage, be proud of our environment. We really need to think about social themes rather than the short disconnected units, which many school curricula actually have. And I think that we have to situate the skills from the arts within human relationships and shared cultural experiences. So it becomes less about maybe isolated classroom production and more about participation and connection and belonging to your own culture, to your own heritage. And there's a strong argument that collaborative and community-based practices will help to address some of the wider aims identified by UNESCO: peace building, intercultural understanding, well-being, inclusion, sustainability. So in this sense, I would say that culture and arts education becomes not an extra, but actually part of how our societies learn to live together.
Beautiful, thank you. Jody.
Yes, thank you, Susan, for those comments. And I'd like to echo the relationship building aspect that I think we are in sore need of in our current world. I think that as artists and arts organization, arts advocates, we might wish to seek those areas in our society which we might not otherwise consider places where artistic practice thrives. I think that we need to maybe move beyond our perceptions, our biases, our blind spots by being intellectually and artistically curious about place-based artistic settings. As artists, educators, and researchers, and I think this is a piece that is missing, the research piece. We need to be intentional about developing these mutually beneficial reciprocal relationships with culture bearers and culture insiders so that we can not only learn, maybe we're even invited to participate in a socially responsive, socially just way, to study creative artistic communities in which adults engage in non-formal artistic expressions. For example, I've conducted a prison choir at a state medium and minimum security prison for the past 11 years. And I thought I was bringing music to that place, only to learn that there was a vibrant music cultural community that already existed. So I think sometimes we need to put forth the suspend judgment, suspend what we know, and ask those questions of others in terms of wanting to know more and relationship building. What can I learn from you, rather than imposing something on an arts community? And I think these are habits of mind that as arts organizations and teacher preparation programs that we might wish to practice. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that is excellently way to the next question that I'm posting in the chat right now. About the expertise and where does it lay and where can it be recognized. So the next question is that I'm asking that the framework acknowledge the framework calls for recognizing artists, indigenous knowledge holders, and cultural practitioners as educators within learning ecosystems, just as you described in terms of the prison choir. So how might this shift challenge and allow development for traditional ideas about who is considered a teacher or a so-called expert in arts education? I will invite Sanja to start answering this question, please.
I know that there is a lot of emphasis on community-based learning, but I always think, and I'm always somehow protective of us as arts teachers. Arts teachers are a very important role in every society, in every country, in every community. What I think that we should really somehow take is the amazing holistic approach that many cultures have. And this repository that UNESCO has now established is an amazing source. It's a treasure chest of so many different experiences, case studies, projects that we can encounter and that we can somehow incorporate in our own work. I also feel, I had the great honor and pleasure to be in all these events that UNESCO has organized, that our colleagues from UNESCO have mentioned. Also Abu Dhabi, and before the WAAE summit in Madeira, where I met Matilda. We live in such a diverse world. It's really such a huge diverse world of different cultures, of different understanding of culture, of different understanding of arts education. And I feel that the repository is a way of intercultural and transcultural connections, of us learning from each other, from each other's culture, and incorporating it into our own culture. Because if we only stick to our own national identity, our own national culture, there is a way of separating, there is a way of dividing. And I feel that this is a chance for the world to somehow unite through culture and arts education. This is why I acknowledge WAAE is a very important factor, because WAAEs, somehow our summits, our conferences that we organize in different parts of the world are such a beautiful example of multidisciplinary art educational environments where all our art forms somehow mix or somehow collaborate. And this is for me a beautiful example. And for us, it's really important to be part of this world community of arts education. I also want to say that there are so many practices that we need to learn, because many of the arts education practices all over the world that are based on indigenous culture are really all about peace, are about coexistence, about how we can live in unity with nature. And I think this is a very important point, especially now when we are talking about sustainability, when we are talking about not only in the crisis, considering wars and the political situation that's going on also in my country and others, it's also about us living in harmony with nature through culture and through art.
Thank you. Thank you, Sanja. Is there anybody else in the panel who'd like to jump into answering this question?
If I could just jump in, I so appreciate, Sanja, the notion, and my comments in terms of community-based learning is in no way a nod to replace the arts educators who are the experts, not only in their craft of the artistic realm, but also the psychology, the educational psychology, the sequencing, the understanding of our student learners and how people learn. I think that you absolutely are correct in wanting to protect the arts educators and the imperative role that they must continue to play, even within a community-based learning setting.
Absolutely.
I just
Susan.
want to add to Brody that I'm not actually, in a way, somehow confronting what you say, because I do a lot of community-based work, and this is amazing. But I just want to state the importance of professional, actually teachers.
No, I didn't see it as confrontation, but I saw it.
No, but I also want to thank you for your valuable work, because I think the work with marginalized communities in prisons or in different areas, or poverty is present everywhere, and this is a very important point. I'm sorry, Mira, I just have to state this. I really think that what is important is that the governments and the states are supporting and financing arts education, because it shouldn't be left on the shoulders of parents. It shouldn't be left on. Then we have differences. Then we have the privileged people who can have art lessons and have music lessons or drama lessons. It should be really state supported, and there should be a strong state support for all arts education. This is the only way how culture can progress. This is the only way how peace can be imperative in the world. Because without culture, I wrote to my colleagues, we are a ray of light in this world of darkness. Unfortunately, we live in a world of darkness, and we must bring hope to the world.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Sanja. Couldn't agree more. I think everybody agrees with that. And of course, the situation in different nations is just so different. So there is no one answer. But yeah, the fight must go on. Susan, did you want to add on this?
Yeah, I think the definition of teachers for me, I actually learn probably more from young people than I do from established people and experts. And one of the things that we're not doing, that sense of belonging, there's a whole generation out there who don't feel that they belong in the world as it exists at the moment. There's a lot of young people out there who feel ignored. And sometimes you have to look at ourselves. I mean, we're all different ages, but we could be seen as the generation that have let the bad things happen, actually. And what opportunities are we giving the young people to actually mold the future? It's no use just saying, oh, we did a survey and they did this project. The young people are tomorrow. And we are the present and notably, possibly the past. And I do think that that is a major thing that is missing in all education, not just arts education.
Thank you. I move on to the next question, and I pasted in the chat as well. The recommendations stress the importance of supporting teachers and educators through professional development, resources, and cross-sector collaboration. What kinds of support systems do arts educators most need today to respond to contemporary social and cultural challenges? I will have Patsy start answering this question, please.
This ties in very much to something that Sanja has just said, and it really, in a way, when I came up with, I have a few points that I'd like to discuss, but when I came up with them all, and I looked at them all, it came down to funding. And I'm going to use Ireland as an example. Our government has decided to give the living wage to all our artists and craftspeople and cultural workers, which is absolutely fantastic, and we need more examples like that. But my area of interest and research is actually in the area of continuing professional development. And what I got from the documents was that we need to have culturally responsive teaching in our continuous professional development. The world has changed. People are moving to different countries, and we need to our teachers and our educators in all areas need to be to get some training in this particular area. We need to have anti-racist and inclusive practice in absolutely everything we do. And we need to have trauma-informed education and also education in the digital media and media arts. We were at a conference in Asia last week, and they were talking about emerging technologies. Emerging technologies have actually emerged, and there are new emerging technologies all the time, and we need to keep up to date with it. And this is a place that I really do see that the 4 organizations within the WAAE can support their members, because we have members from all of the areas of education within our particular groups. And maybe this is something we need to look at after this particular week. We have to also make sure that we have socially engaged and participatory arts practice in everything we do. Professional development is most effective when it's practical, collaborative, and reflective, rather than purely theoretical. And we educators in all areas would benefit from workshop led by practicing artists, peer learning communities, mentoring schemes, and opportunities to experiment creatively without fear of failure or fear of assessment. Now, I do see the need for assessment for some of the programs that are out there, but we also have to take those risks. We have to have the wicked problems and solve them ourselves. The next area that really I feel is vitally important to this is the access to quality resources. We need to have accessible teaching materials. And what struck me reading the guidelines was the radio teaching in Pakistan, because we are aware even today when we have a developed country like New Zealand having problems with connectivity over the internet, it just shows you that so many people across the world do not have the same access, and we need to try and find more equitable access for everybody. We need to have funding for arts projects. I think everybody would agree, but we need to have time for planning and collaboration for all of our in all of our professional development. We need to have cross-sector collaboration, and this is very, very, very important in terms of schools, artists, cultural institutions, community organizations, all of the groups that we've already discussed, youth services, mental health and social care sectors. They need to connect learning to real-world social and cultural issues. The other thing that came across was the lack sometimes of institutional support for all of the sectors. That sometimes our institutions that we are working in don't really understand or value arts education, don't give us protected time for creative practice, and don't give us stable funding. So these are issues that need to be looked at. And well-being for the educators themselves. We need more networks and communities of practice like the 4 organizations here today that everybody can tap into for what they need. And here's the challenge to us, is to meet the needs of our members who come across all of the areas we're discussing today. We could encourage peer mentoring. We could encourage more collaborative projects. We could encourage the exchange of teaching strategies and reflective dialogue and interdisciplinary experimentation. And we have done this ourselves within the WAAE. Maybe we need to do more of it. Maybe we need to promote the interdisciplinary experimentation at our next Congress. What I would say in conclusion is that art educators need support systems that are collaborative, inclusive, flexible, and adequately funded. Contemporary social and cultural challenges, including equality, climate crisis, migration, and technological change, cannot be addressed by educators working in isolation. So it will be very interesting to see what happens in UNESCO when they start to evaluate these programs and evaluate what countries have actually followed the guidelines, implemented the guidelines. And it will be interesting looking at, and I know different countries have a lot more wealth than others, but it will be interesting to see what percentage, or if there has been an increase in the funding given to the culture and arts framework since it was developed. So that's over to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Patsy. Does anybody else want to answer these questions, Anya? please.
I just want to say that the UNESCO recommends that 1% of every country's budget should be allocated to culture. And this is actually not happening. And I would really appreciate, I wouldn't say that UNESCO should put a blacklist of countries that have much less, like for example, Serbia, 0.67 for culture. And this is really disappointing, and not to say that, okay, it's a very difficult situation right now, but just to say that maybe the best example should be on the UNESCO website, so that people could reflect and say, oh, you see, you know, other countries can do it, they can make it, because it's not about how much is the budget, the whole budget of a country. You know, that we have, of course, countries that are well off, and I really admire this, I must say, Patsy, that Ireland is giving this support for artists, and I have heard about it. And I hope it will spread all over the world like a good virus. But I think it is about really stressing how important it is. And some countries that do not have large budgets allocate 1% and more to culture. And this somehow we come to the source. What is the source? Many things will be solved with more funding. But I also want to say one important reflection. It is that when we were doing the survey with all the teachers, arts teachers all over the world, it is actually they stressed, what do you need? What do you need more? And most of them said time. So time is such an important factor.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That's also recognized by Susan on the chat and others. Thank you so much, Patsy. Please.
Just one thing also that I forgot to say, and it relates to, if we're talking about professional development, one of the areas that I'd like to go to, and maybe it is solely with the educators, but it can be the educators in all systems, is that there has to be it has to be included in initial teacher education. This area has to be included. It's not in my country. Sustainable development is, technology is, whatever. And I think it would be very important to make sure that culture and arts education is included, because once it's included in the curriculum, then it will happen in initial teacher education, and then it will happen in all of the other formal and non-formal education sectors as well. So it would be interesting to see how many governments have actually implemented this as part of their core, let's say, policy for education in the future.
And I certainly will hope that they in UNESCO will make these surveys and research and to see how the implementation guidance has been taken. And we will probably hear more from UNESCO soon. We are at the time. I know we have probably people who would like to ask questions. We don't have anything in the chat, any questions. We started a couple minutes late, so I think we have 2 minutes maybe left. If there is a burning question from somebody, or if one of the panelists would like to say the final word before we end.
Can I just say that one of the really important topics is artificial intelligence and the use of digital media. And I think I really acknowledge that we are moving with the times, and it is so important to have this in the framework, in the guidance. So we should really think about the ethical use of artificial intelligence and be aware of it, and use it not as a replacement. Again, I must say, not as a replacement of arts education teacher, but only as collaborators. Artificial intelligence should be used, we are moving with the times, but as collaboration and support, and not as replacement.
Thank you. Yes, we didn't have time to cover all of our questions, so the technology questions were left out. Patsy, you have a final word.
Another thing that I think is vitally important for every single one of us is to strengthen the use of mother tongue. Absolutely, in all of our organizations and in all of the work that we do. I think it's very important in INSEA. We're now trying to move to English is the language that we use within the organization, but we are trying to move to use other languages within our publications, within our meetings, within our webinars. And I think this is vitally important. I think AI can be an advantage, because when we have publications, for example, in different languages, AI can be used constructively to translate them into whatever language we have. So I think that I agree with Sonia, we need to look at that whole aspect of it, but I do think we need to focus a little bit more on the mother tongue as a way of promoting arts and culture education across the world.
Thank you. And thank you, Jody, for in very kind invitation. Please, everyone, check it out in the chat. There's an invitation to join the music and peace building event right after. I at this point would like to thank all the panelists for excellent conversation. This was really, really exciting, and just the beginning for us to start to understand how we can benefit the guidance more in the future in culture and arts education. I'm wishing a very happy International Culture and Arts Education Week for everyone, and we'll see you in the upcoming other webinars. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you,
Thank
Mira.
you, Mira, for
Thank you,
organising
Mira.
this. Thank you.
Mira, thank you so much
Yeah.
for organizing our webinar.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.